The COVID-19 pandemic is now in its human transmission phase, traveling person to person usually via close contact within 6 feet. Simply being near an infected person who coughs, sneezes, or talks can expose one to the infection. India's coronavirus tally crossed the 6.07 million or the 60 lakh cases mark, mortality rate at 1.64%. With an effective vaccine nearly an year away, early detection followed by self-isolation is the only solution one sees. The COVE Band by KaHa is designed keeping wellness as the first priority. The band helps in tracking SpO2, temperature, heart rate and other health vitals smartly and keep the user safe with social distancing and contact tracing features. Social distancing is the primary strategy used to prevent the spread of the virus that causes COVID-19. The COVE Band not only helps the user keep a daily log of his or her vitals, but also reduces the workload for doctors as they have an understanding of your health parameters in advance. The chances of our frontline health workers being exposed to the possible COVID-19 infected patients is also reduced. The government of Singapore used the device as a part of their COVID-19 response strategy, and agencies like NCID are using it as a part of the research strategy. The COVE Band is an innovation by founder Pawan Gandhi and his team of researchers and development professionals based in Bangalore. Wearables are a part and parcel of our time, but writing the AI algorithms to help isolate high-risk or possible COVID-19 patients was part of the strategy. What was also important is to track the SpO2 levels, checking the oxygen levels to know the health of the lungs. The band has the ability to also integrate with pre-existing app that tracks only location. The data is secure and privacy audits have been done by the Reserve Bank of India audit-approved agencies. The band monitors your health and other criteria to keep your immunity high. It's a step in the right direction to isolate the virus and let it die, and not let it carry from human to human. While the world of science works in the background to find a cure, and the world must wait and take precautions for not spreading the virus. Krishangi Sinha, Democracy News Live, New Delhi.
Good evening, everyone. I welcome you to our show, It Matters, on Democracy News Live. The COVID-19 pandemic is a defining feature of 2020. It's showing us what a global health crisis can look like. At this time, there are no foolproof cures or vaccines. However, there are many ongoing clinical trials evaluating potential treatments. Nearly 2,000 clinical trials are underway around the world. Scientists are racing against time to find a cure. The best way to prevent the slowdown and slow down the transmission is to be well informed about your own health, first of all, keeping social distancing in place and keeping your immunity levels high. One of the best ways to get cured if you catch the virus early. Now, the COVE Band that we're discussing today is a strategy that the government of Singapore used around, frontline workers that were getting exposed. Anyways, we'll hear more about it. We're going to be joined by the founder, Pawan Gandhi. They have a 65-member research and development team based out of Bangalore, India, who worked on this band. Now, the COVE Band that we're discussing today is one such way of keeping, secure communities in place and making sure that in case somebody is at high risk, they can be isolated and they can stop the spread of disease. The Research and Development Center, again, obviously has worked towards it, and the AI algorithms that they put in place are continuing to work towards it. Now, joining me, Pawan, who's right here. He's the founder and CEO of KaHa PT Limited. It's a Singapore-based end-to-end IoT platform specifically created around COVID. Also joining me today is Professor Denis Xavier. He's a researcher in the world of disease. He kind of works on different diseases. He's been working with the government of India on evaluating the safety and efficacy of drug prophylaxis for COVID-19, as well as researching on better treatments for COVID-19. Welcome you both to the show. Let me start with you, Pawan. First of all, tell me what was the thinking behind it when you came about and said, here we are, and COVID-19 is at our doorstep. What was that? What was your first thought?
So, Rohit, thank you very much for inviting me for this discussion, and really privileged to have Professor Dennis as part of having a more insightful conversation. So, the journey around this actually started, a few years back when, as a company, we decided to commit ourselves to preventive care. If you look at how healthcare has been through decades. It's not about preventive healthcare. The idea is that one day you get into critical illness and you check yourself into a hospital. Everything that has happened in the healthcare over decades is primarily designed around this kind of thinking. However, now with the new technologies coming in, you can flip the way you look at the way healthcare has to be provisioned, and one should also aim towards democratizing the information around how healthcare is important to me. How can I try and get information about wellness to non-medical professionals? How can it go beyond Dr. Dennis and his team to common people like me, my parents, and so on? So as part of that, we were provisioning products, we were designing products, and the core around that was remote care monitoring. The idea was that you will have people who will have critical illness, who would go through surgeries and will go to their homes. And can we provide them enough care so that they stay at home, and whenever there is an alert, the system is able to triangulate the data. The machine learning is able to create much more intelligence around it and make sure that the healthcare can be provisioned at their home rather than asking them to come to the hospitals. We felt that this was a very, very important kind of shift in the way healthcare could be provisioned. And came February, March, when we started hearing about COVID, and we immediately went in and created probably amongst the very early product which could detect your body temperature, heart rate, SpO2, activities, and sleep. And we felt that these things, and for the computer to kind of triangulate this data, would be in a position to create early alerts. And the moment we had that system in place, as part of your early introduction, it got deployed and we got deeply engaged with the government of Singapore, with Ministry of Health, and it got deployed in multiple kind of scenarios, mainly to make sure that there is a focused attention at a large scale. So frontline workers was one. It was very important to safeguard them. Also to make sure that the vulnerable groups, which could then become the carriers, they are very closely monitored. And the only way you can monitor them at scale is if you have a remote monitoring system in place. So all they need to do is to wear a simple device, like the one that you showed in your initial video, and they just have to wear it, charge it, and that's about it. They don't need to do anything. The data gets picked up, is thrown to a server, it triangulates the data, and in case there are any vulnerable symptoms, then it raises an alert to the healthcare provisioning officers.
So what you're saying, Pavan, is that if you are, a frontline health worker, you're a policeman, you're anywhere in a job which is going to be putting you at the forefront of this whole battle against COVID. First of all, you need to be protected, and possibly one of the early places to start when you begin finding protection for your people in society. Maybe these are the first ones that need to be protected, because in India there are about 400 doctors who've died of COVID. That's the number I've been getting. And so, if there are going to be that many hospital staff and doctors and nurses that are getting exposed to this virus, if they are alerted in advance of when a patient walks in and what their parameters are, they already know if is the patient at how, are they going to be at high risk because of the patient or not. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so you're right, Rohit. So a couple of scenarios when you look at provisioning with either the frontline workers themselves, and this would include the doctors themselves. So people who are, the frontliners to create those medical facility available. So it is the doctor staff, the hospital staffs, and for them to have intelligence, as what you rightly said, when people come in, if there is a way for them to have a dashboard which is giving them their vitals way in advance to understand or to plan how the medical facility is going to get provisioned. So that's one. But then you can also create several other subgroups. At in the current time, so there's been a curve. Initially, you had to protect the frontline workers. Then it was very important to kind of identify, and most of the countries did that very well, to identify hotspots and make sure that you have enough technology deployed to manage those. Now it is also a point where you need to make sure that, as the borders are opening up slowly, you need to make sure that you have some technology provision such that those people can be monitored, and you keep controlling within your boundaries the spread of the virus.
Okay. Okay. Professor Dennis, let me bring you in here. How is technology being used to manage the current situation from the point of view of clinical researchers and the government? I'm not getting your audio, Professor. I can't hear you for some reason.
Right. I'm sorry. Okay. So firstly, we are using technology as this popular, government app that was prepared called the Arogya Setu. So that's on a smartphone and it's freely available. So people are encouraged to use that. So you know your status, and you also are able to find out, how many positive patients are people are close by to you, within a specified distance, so hotspots can be managed well. And if at all you have to go to an area like this, you take additional precautions. So that is one. Second, within a healthcare setup itself, people are trying out different kinds of devices. It could be a wearable device, either on their wrist or on their chest, and which can pick up different physiological parameters and feed it into systems so that people can take corrective action.
Okay. So Arogya Setu, I know, certainly it was a step in the right direction very early on, but there was a lot of negative connotations around it in terms of data privacy and things like that. Now, I know the COVE band, and one of my first questions to Pawan was, privacy data. And he said the government of India's, Reserve Bank of India's audit agencies kind of done the privacy checks. Now, what this band does, for example, the COVE band, it goes beyond just contact tracing. And contact tracing, because there are only 7 or 8% of the population which has downloaded the app. When we get down to more analytics from getting from the device, is this device a step ahead of what the Arogya Setu app was?
What I understood from looking at the material on the COVID band, which Pawan shared earlier, is since it's a wearable, it's with you all the time. People leave their mobile phones at a distance. They sometimes leave it at home and go to work and elsewhere, and therefore, this data is being collected at all times and it's available to you. Number one. Number two, as I understand, also is this device. Pulls in all the physiological parameters, such as heart rate, your respiratory rate, then the oxygen saturation in your blood, and I'm sure there is many more parameters that can come in. And I also understand, given the track record of the organization, that the back end is quite sophisticated, and technology is being used to predict as well. So this is wonderful. So you can. I'm not sure as yet, and I think Pawan can speak to it. But technology like this can predict people worsening. What we don't want is a person, going to, I mean, let's say mild symptoms. You're isolating at home. You go to bed, and then in the middle of the night, your blood sugars are going down. Maybe your oxygen saturation is going down, and then you can be alerted. The required people can be alerted. Family members, hospitals as well. It can be connected. So there is a lot of scope this way with wearable devices.
Is there an impact study, Pawan, if I may ask you, around the wearable? And was there a study done? Has it kind of shown you what the results are?
So, the good thing, Rohit, is that around this time, a lot of countries have used technology very effectively. So while we speak about how our technology got deployed in Singapore, in US, in Europe, it wasn't just us. There were a plethora of other technologies, complementary technologies, which were also being deployed. Arogya Setu is one such brilliant example that you and Dr. Dennis are referring to. Um, the case studies that are coming out of it are the fact that there is an immediate impact, there is an immediate result, right? I'll give you a couple of examples. I mean, of course, we speak about how the technologies are being used by serious researchers to understand the pattern. again, I would go back to what Dr. Dennis referred to. It's important that you create those patterns and create early alerts so that you have enough time to take whatever necessary actions needs to be taken. In the US, it was important that the schools open up, and CDC there came out with certain guidelines. So our product is now deployed with a bunch of schools in the US so that children can come back in safe environment. So not only are you getting early detection and triangulation of data, alerts, and so on, it is creating a real sense of confidence and peace of mind for parents, for the school management, and the technology takes care 100% of all the CDC requirements as well, which is fully automated. As an example, CDC requires you to take 2 or 3 times body temperature reading while the child is in the school. Now imagine if you have 2,000 children in a school or 1,000 kids in a school, how do you provision for the management teams, teachers, staff to go to every child and take the readings a few times, right? And the human errors, the kind of violations or you're not able to comply. Now here's a technology which is making sure that there is 100% compliance, and you not only take the temperature, you also guide the management on what would be the next steps. So the outcomes are tangible, they are measurable, and they are immediate. So some of those impacts on a technology like these really allow people to scale it really fast. And these are not usual times. This is not deploying and provisioning of technology like regular times. Here you really need something which can have immediate impact.
So what you're saying is that the deployment of the bans is happening in the school districts of the United States, where students are going to be using these bans as they go back to school.
That is right. So this has happened already. We've already provisioned it in schools in the US, in Europe. Very interesting. Even in care centers, there are companies in Europe. This one particular company in Europe which is responsible to providing services, which is carpenters, plumbers. Now again, it goes to frontliners in a different dimension. But these are people. People need to service their air conditioners, to fix their plumbing. You will have to allow people to come in, and the fact that your artisans are wearing these devices and the data comes to you with the rating saying this person is wearing it and he's safe, gives you that much more confidence, and economies can start. People mentally needs to start living their lives close to what it was in earlier times, right? Imagine you have your plumbing broken up, your winters are setting in Europe, and you need your heatings to start working, and you don't know if you want to take the risk of getting somebody from outside. And suddenly now you have a way in which there is that safety kind of a measure or ranking. This also feeds into how economy needs to start, livelihood needs to start all over again.
Dennis, let me come back to you there in kind of understanding this. Does digitalization help in patient health outcomes? You've done this research for years. Is digitalization going to be able to help?
Absolutely. We can't but accept technology, accept digitalization, and people erroneously believe that technology and digitalization is actually expensive. Initially, it may look so. And also people are afraid of what will happen to their data, etc. But more and more there are safeguards being put in place, and of course the people will have to take care. So that's one. So for me, the best thing, since we are talking about COVID, the ideal would be for people not to get the infection at all in the first place. So at the very first, I mean, as we would call it in our clinical research jargon, we'll call it primordial prevention. That means even, I mean, not getting the first infection at all. So allowing you not to go there itself, number one. Number two, if you have the infection, and as we know, majority of the cases, well over 80% of the cases are mild cases, and that's why we've allowed people who with mild infection to stay at home and take care of themselves. But we can use the technology here now to ensure that the patients are monitored very carefully, and again using high-end technology at the back, we can predict people who can become worse. And rather than figuring out at 2 in the morning that this person is kind of crashing, maybe at 8 in the evening itself, we take them to the hospital, so well in advance, and then they're taken care of. And once they are in the hospital, let's say, as we call, the next level is the isolation ward, either in a private room or in a ward. You're mild to moderate, and then there as well. And no hospital in the world has unlimited either ICUs or respirators. Who are the people who will need it? And say, even in our own hospital, it's very unfortunate. We have a huge setup, but still we don't have sufficient ICUs. So predicting people who will need, and then putting all this data together, we can say, okay, in the next 24 hours, in the next 48 hours, this is what we will need, and then we can make those facilities available. And also the other way around, people are going to recover. If we can keep track of them as well, it'll be wonderful. So technology is here to stay, and the only thing is, all of us will have to embrace it sooner than later, and use it optimally. And with more and more players coming in, the technology is going to get cheaper, and that's the way to go forward, Rohit.
So, I met somebody today, I'm not going to name them, but the approach was defeatist. The approach was, we all are going to get COVID, and the only way forward is, there is going to be herd mentality, and that's the way out. I don't think we can stop this. There's going to be a much larger number. I think the idea that, Pawan, you have in place, and Dr. Dennis, you're talking about, is we need to have a more proactive approach. We cannot have the defeatist mentality of whether this is going to impact us. What we need to do is obviously work on our health, keep our immunities high, fight the virus in the bodies if we can, and obviously, what this band also does is, help in, keeping social distancing alive, making sure that we don't come too close to people. So I was using one of the bands, and it showed me that if I came too close to somebody else who was wearing a band, it told me you're too close. So having events, a lot of people in places, and still being able to maintain a social distance, and then knowing the parameters of all the people involved. So I think there are tremendous ways of that we'll be able to take this forward and fight it. And I'm sure there is a lot going on in the back end, and this research is going to continue going on and knowing how we're going to fight this infection. Thank you, both of you, for joining me for this show. Dennis, Pawan, I think it's a phenomenal thing. As we move forward, we can move out with more confidence. Thank you for watching. Good night and good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rohit.